To you millions of listeners, welcome back to the Crushing Iron podcast.
The millions and millions and millions. It's October 19th.
That's technically a fact.
It is a fact. 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 724.
Yes, it is. And we're moving into the chilly season up here.
Yeah, you got in the 30s?
There will be some 30s on the way. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 30 on the way too.
Yep. And it's tough to keep swimming in this water, but I keep getting in there.
Well, if you keep getting in, it's just going to keep feeling the same, right? And what they say.
That's my goal. That's the goal.
That's the goal, right? It's going to be gradual. It's just like training, right? You do a 15-minute run one week, and then 16, and then 17, and then 20, and then you work your way slowly up. And it's not so much a shock to the system when you want to go from 10 to 40, and then you're smashed. Same things I would have to imagine, in a way, is like, gradually being in the water every day and having going from 60 to 59 to 58 to 57. But I got to imagine a lot of it's got to do with the ambient temp.
It definitely matters. And dude, I got to say, this is actually a really good point, because that's exactly what I've been thinking. Is like every day you get in there and the shock value is not as difficult, but it's there. But it's just incrementally getting better and strong, or like getting more used to things. I think that's the key to everything that we talk about, really. And I've been kind of like backstroking into it now, and it's like 50 degrees water.
You're starting off with the backstroke?
Well, I mean, how you jump in a lake and you kind of like spin over and do a couple backstrokes type of deal. I've been doing that because I've been actually wearing a little bit of a stocking cap, keep my head warm when I'm plunging. But then I sit in there longer and longer and try to hang. So, I mean, 60 is not that big. I mean, people swim the channel at 60 degrees, so I'm not that proud of it, but it's something.
But the goal is to make the 60, the eventual 45 feel like the 60.
Yeah.
That's the deal, right? That's everything we do, right? With training and in life, it's when you have constant exposure to something, then it never seems as daunting as when you just shock your system into things. It's just like, it doesn't seem as significant. Your body's adapting, whether it's training stress related or life stress related. You got, from a work standpoint, if you have a standing, standing meeting that's every Thursday, that's, not the easy meeting to have, but it's pretty hard, but it's coming, you prepare for it. You've done it, you can learn from it, and it's constant exposure every Thursday. Now, if you were, you had a phone call from your boss at, 8:55, and he said, be in my office at 9, period. You'd have a fucking panic attack.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like, oh my gosh, what happened? What do I need to do? What did I mess up? You're clearing your browser history. You're panicking. You're telling your spouse you might be about to lay it off. And then you walk in and they're like, hey, you want to go grab lunch later? And you still have this huge stress response. But that's the same thing, right? With training and with athletes that you see and you talk about, so often is, there's consistent, training stress. You talked about with the cold plunge, what I think is such a great example, just like it is, when, and how much more stressful on the body it is when people want to do it from scratch, right? Even Wim Hof, he's got an app that you can use, start out with a cold shower. I think the starting point is 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And then next week it's 15. It's because the goal isn't to overstress your body into shock. It's to start to get the actual benefits from doing it. But what it also does is it makes it attainable, right? Because if you start off, it's all right, we're going to start you off on the Wim Hof method, 5 minutes cold plunge, go. You'd be like, fuck that. No way. I'm not doing that. I'm out. Or you do it once and realize how miserable it is and you'd quit, which is, if we're talking, it's that's training in a nutshell. People overcommit, people yo-yo on the roller coaster of, 20 hours one week, 3 hours the next week, or too much intensity, or too much volume and then too little. It's got to be it's got to be a slow burn, like we always say. And the same goes for, in the summer. Everyone wants to go out and be a runner in the summer. and start, and the sun's out, we got more light in the day, and I want to start running, and it's hot, and you're going from like no training right in the hot weather. But if you had run and, if you ran and rode outside from the time it got even like remotely cool, then you're constantly exposed to riding in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, because it goes up for the most part incrementally. Although, like, sometimes in the Midwest and even in the South, it feels like we get about, I don't know, 2 weeks of spring before summer hits. So sometimes that's a little bit hard on the body. But that's another great example, right? Is there's not this like slow progression that allows your body to adapt. So it's such an interesting topic in terms of like introducing, good stress, right? We always talk about stress in I think a negative context, right? But you have to stress your body in a way, because there's even good stress, like, moving to a new house that you really want to have. That's a good stress. Getting a new job, that's a good stress. Getting a new relationship, that's a new stress. But it's good stress, has an impact, but it's still an impact on the body. And when you do it drastically and almost like impulsively, then there are kind of negatives to it. And so I think, again, going back to the cold plunging, you've been doing it daily, that's the ticket to everything, right? Is, you don't look at for perfection, but you're looking to make it a habit and part of your life. And if you can do it slowly and surely and gradually, then it has a much better a chance of sticking and not having like a negative impact, but instead a continuous and long-term positive impact.
Absolutely. And another thing that's happening is, like I've always talked about this shit, I've always been into it and everything like that. And I think a lot of triathletes kind of do that too. They're into doing Ironman, but then they're like the reality of it sets in, sort of thing. And, now after, like building some consistency and things like that, and whatever it is, it makes you feel stronger about it. It makes you feel more confident about it, and you actually feel more authentic about it. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed is, I like yesterday I was planning a run, and I found myself just for a split second. I looked outside and it was kind of nice, and I was kind of like, I went, I kind of hope it rains. I had a weird, like doing a run in a rain sounded good to me.
Yeah.
And I think most of us avoid that, but it was just an interesting mental shift for me that I was like, man, I want a challenge or something, and I'm not doing crazy long runs or anything like that. I'm keeping that, I'm building that in a way that makes more sense to me. And I usually don't do this in the off season. That's why I'm kind of happy about it. But when you can do it, you have the confidence, you have the courage and authenticity about where you're at, it matters. And then suddenly you're kind of seeking out some of those things that might be harder or more challenging to you, and with a different mindset on it. So, I really love this topic in the sense that it's so imperative to do that year round, whether that's build up, build down, go back and forth and do things in a manageable way. And you nailed it, right? Is like, if you dive into something with guns blazing and you're not ready for it, you might nail it the first day, but then it's just hard to keep it up. And so many, not only is it a challenge to get consistent, which you talk about constantly, it's just one of those things where the more consistent you are, you're growing at a rate that you can maintain it, and it just like it snowballs into so many different other things,
Well, I think your body, you said it really well. I think your body also starts to crave those like positive, incremental, correct doses of stress when done right. Right? Like, you want to get back in the water and take a cold shower. You want to go for a run. You want to go to the pool and swim. Your body kind of craves that because it gets better. It gets healthier, right? It has a positive response. If you overdo it, then you have a negative experience, right? You have one with the experience itself, whether it was, jumping in and doing too cold of a plunge, going from, not doing it to, 30 degrees, or You go out for too long of a run that you had no business doing, and you're shelled. Not only is your body shelled, but it sends that energy to like, I think your psyche, and you become like resistant to, I don't really do it again because you had a bad experience. Like, it's just life. Like, it's cause and effect. And so when you do things like, again, and that's why like this time of year I think is so crucial in a lot of ways for so many athletes is to me, it's not necessarily the perfect stimulus you need to be looking for. It's not the perfect, percentage of intensity and distribution in each zone that you should be looking for. And it's not even, to me, the volume that you should be concerned about. It's continuing on with the behavior. And that is where a lot of athletes totally drop the ball this time of year. Yes, I 100%, you do too, suggest and support being extra flexible, October, November, December. You got December rules, which, really allow for flexibility and push flexibility and encourage autonomy, and you're always kind of surprised at the athletes, that how much they actually do. But if you look at an athlete, if I look at an athlete this time of year and I'm trying to predict and plan for the future and make make an educated guess how consistent I think they're going to be when the time matters, is if you look at an athlete that's done, 6 total hours of training over the week, and they have 2 days they totally took off, and they go out and do a really long run, and they take another 2 days off, then they do a swim, then they do a ride and a run, they get 6 hours. They did those for 3 days, but they missed 4 days. That's yo-yoing, right? Then again, if you look at another athlete who did 1 hour every day for 6 days and took Sunday off, my bet's on that person. No great workouts. No, we're not trying to impress anybody. We're not trying to do something fantastic. We're not trying to do something earth-shattering. We're not sitting here trying to, I'm terrified I'm going to lose all my fitness. No one's, you shouldn't be feeling that, and you have to lose some fitness. What you should try to keep is that energy and benefit you get from the behavior piece, right? Of just continuously committing to doing something healthy for yourself every day. Because then what happens is, and we talked about this a lot, is the overcompensation people do when they feel like they're way behind, or they haven't done enough, or they feel like a certain level of shame even tied to their lack of doing things, that instead of going out for the 1 hour run on the schedule, they try to double it up to make up for it. Well, that ain't how it works, folks. That's not how it works, folks. You don't make up for it by overstressing and crushing your body. You do it by complementing it. And the interesting part about that is if you have athletes that miss a lot and they go to make up for it, what they should really be doing instead of doing more is they should be doing less. Because you probably went through a period of like detraining, and that's why you see the same athletes over and over again put a string together and then the string breaks. Put the strings together and the string break. And it sometimes gets longer, but a lot of times it gets shorter. But it's that. And I think as a society, right? Like we have created the myth that you should get some gigantic benefit or response from everything every day. That's just, spectacular. That's not how really anything works, right? It's all about slow, incremental, positive, responses to stress every day, because it's a good thing. Because what happens is it makes you more resilient, from going from 60 degrees down to 35 degrees in the water. You go 1 degree a week, it might take you 25 weeks. By the time you get down there, that 35 is going to feel like probably not the 60, but probably the 50 to 55 used to. But if you try to make that huge jump from 60 degrees, 35 degrees, or 1 hour hard on the bike to 2 hours hard on the bike, or from a 50-minute run to an hour 45-minute run, you're going to be taking steps backwards, not forwards. And, this time of year, when you talk about managing stress and being far from races, and then you got the holidays, right, woven in, which I think most people would admit in some way, shape, or form is a stressor, right? You got holidays, you got travel, you got your loved ones, whether you get on with them or, get along with them or not. if you're married, you got in-laws, kids are home, you got extra parties, you got presents, you got travel. It's just stressful. And then you talk about, doing things each day to help allow you to cope with that stress. I think a lot of times the impulse, right, for most athletes is to do way too much or to do nothing at all. Because again, we try to mirror the stress response to what we have to do, in training as more, instead of kind of complimenting and giving wiggle room. And so, yeah, it's a great topic. It always is. And we talk about it, I think, probably every podcast in some way, some way, shape, or form, about being consistent. But there's just different levels of consistency and different expectations you should have with it. But always remembering, right, that, if you're a person that, we talk about this a lot with athletes, like say, yeah, I'm prone to stress fractures, or I'm prone to, overtraining, or I'm prone to injuries. I usually combat that with, more than likely, you're just prone to poor decision making. You're more than likely prone to running too hard too often, right? You're probably prone to not taking care of yourself. So we like to slap these labels on ourselves as it's not our fault, but a lot of things are, right? It are our fault. We aren't responsible. We do too much. We go too hard. We don't want to listen to our bodies. And then we're like, I'm just prone to injuries. No, you're not. You're prone to making bad decisions over and over again, which usually leads you down, right, a wrong path. Or I'm prone to gaining weight, over in the winter. Okay, well, why is that? Well, one, you're prone to not doing as much. You're prone to not being outside. You're prone to probably overindulging and not matching that, in the other days of the week in the kitchen and in your training. So you're not prone to that. You're prone to the other things. And that's, I think, just a responsibility piece. We have to remember and recognize that, yeah, be flexible, indulge, do all these things, have trunk cookies, eat a whole bag of chips and salsa like I do, every once in a while, but don't use the blame game, because when you do that, then you sit on the sidelines. And the last thing you want to do really ever is sit on the sidelines voluntarily, because the next thing you know, you'll be put there, when you don't want to be.
Yeah. I think we have to remember a lot of what we talk about is based on experience and things we've been through with our athletes and ourselves and over many, many years in this sport. And, in a hack-filled, I want it now world, sometimes that doesn't sound great. It's like, oh, come on, I want a solution here, but I think back to how many times I have gone after sort of a quick fix. I think I talked about it, when we were living in Chattanooga. I remember one day I just came out of the blue and I was like, I just need to feel something that hurts today. And I ran 16 miles, out of the blue.
You talked about it on the cast.
Yeah. And, it's shit like that, every once in a while I think is fine, because I really, it was just sort of an emotional thing. I just wanted to go feel it. And then you have this idea, it's like, well, you want to prove something to yourself, or maybe you're on the verge of having no confidence and want confidence and want to just prove that you can still do it or whatever. That's fine. But to make it habitual, like you're saying, I do still indulge in trunk cookies every now and then. And I'll look at myself and I'll be like, what the hell? I just ate a whole sleeve of Oreos or whatever. Like a whole half, not the whole thing, but you just go, and I'm looking at those cookies sometimes and I'm like, what do they put in these things to create that? Because I'll buy stuff from the store sometimes. I eat maybe a one or two, but if those Oreos are just the size and there's something, but anyway,
Listen, to be fair, to be fair, if you don't eat them all, you kind of leave, because you leave the other ones feeling kind of lonely in their row.
The rationale is unbelievable in that.
Another rationale, like how you guys look so lonely. You kind of look halfway. The other rows are full. They got plenty of partners. They're all warm and toasty. Let me just go ahead and demolish the whole row. So listen, I get that, but I had this conversation with Hayden yesterday, not about Oreos, and I'll shut up. It's like he talked about, we're talking about, what, he was asking about a snack or what was fruit. I said, go get some fruit. He brought some fruit snacks out of the pantry. I was like, dude, that does not qualify as a fruit. He was like, yes, it does. It's a fruit snack. And I said, well, not only is it not fruit, but there's legit nothing really good inside of those things at all, period. And then we started talking about how actual fruit and how much more expensive it is versus like stuff that's bad for you, and how the cheapest things to get your hands on now are the worst things for you, and how just totally messed up it is. But yeah, going back to the Oreos, like, yeah, I'm telling you, they lace those things with.
Oh yeah, it's a food science. They have it down cold.
Yeah, they got us by the cream bill.
And just I said Oreos, but the other day I meant Chips Ahoy. So just to clarify that.
Soft baked.
Yeah. Well, no, these are original, man. I don't vary usually.
You don't go with the soft?
They're pretty soft. You know, they're soft enough. You can just
you don't heat them up.
You don't even need teeth. You can just use your tongue.
You don't even use the teeth.
Anyway, my point on, I guess, that run thing, and this is what I talk to athletes a lot about, is in retrospect usually, is that it's a concept of forcing it. We want to force ourselves into shape, or we want to force ourselves into being different people or whatever, but the outcome is always much better if we allow the body to figure it out on its own. And that is the concept that I just really swear by, even though I don't always do it. But I know it works, and I know I've been talking about cold plunging a lot, but to me it's the analogy right now, because it's sort of like you get in that water and you don't think about anything, and your body has to work on its own. You're just thinking about breathing. So the point is that, you know, you're working your organs and trying to keep the body warm and stuff like that. You don't know how to do that. Like, well, a lot of it is you do try to connect that mentally with the body, but normally it's an adaptation. So your body's like, okay, I remember what this is. I know how to do it now, rather than going into, you know, some crazy run like I did out of the blue, and your body's probably like, what the hell? Shut down, like all steam backwards. We can't let this happen again. And I think the next week your body's saying that, right? So it is to me about giving your body a chance to understand what's going on and letting it do it. You know, I've talked to somebody about, you know, a lot of questions we get are, I want to run faster. And, you know, you're working on, that run program that we're going to offer our athletes here for the next couple months or whatever. And it's a building run. And I know you've seen it before, and I've seen it many times, where people are just consistent with their run. They're not doing anything too fancy at all. And the next thing you know, it might be 3-4 months later, you know, their normal pace is a mile faster, just because I think that they let their body figure it out on its own. You know, I've seen it so many times from our athletes. I'll just see them and I'm like, damn, you're running easy and going fast. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really been thinking about it. I've just been doing it, you know? And I think that's the point a lot of times, is that we try to hammer something into our body that it's not ready for.
You know, it's funny because like I think if you look at the most successful programs, you know, whether it's a training plan or, you know, the run program we're doing or anything, you know, a 4-week block laid out by your coach, whatever it is. If you look at it and you say, damn, that looks super hard. I'm not sure if I can finish that, but you know, it's ramping up big, and you're like, and then you have the other one that looks like annoyingly conservative. I'm going with annoyingly conservative every single time. And like the run program specifically, it's like, it's not annoyingly conservative. It's like annoyingly slow progression in terms of time. But it's funny, like, you know, you talk about, you know, you said, you had this conversation with athletes, obviously after the fact. You know, in the years that you've coached, and years that I've coached, have you ever had an athlete text you or reading training piece, you got an email that said, you know, one of these things? One, coach, I went too slow today. I think I got hurt.
No.
Negative. Coach, you know, I went out, I ran normal. I didn't try and change my run stride, and I think I got hurt. No. Coach, I went out and I continued with my normal route, my normal pace, and I wore the same shoes I always wear, and I got hurt. No. or I did the exact same duration. I didn't go over. I go, no, you always hear, I went too fast and too hard. I think I might have strained something. Or I tried to change my run form and go from a heel striker to a 4-foot striker. I didn't start out by 10 minutes, started by an hour. And then you had a stress fracture. Check. I just had an athlete yesterday. I'm trying to change up this. And now I'm like, yeah, stop trying to change shit. I think it's like one of the biggest, like, you're talking about just like overall distract, because it's a form of distraction for some reason. And I think we as a society have never been more distracted than we are right now. And when you want to change things, it's because you're just overall distracted, right? Stop trying to change. Just do it right for as long as you possibly can. And then once you've done it right for as long as you possibly can, then your body, right? Just like diets, right? You do a diet for a certain amount of time, the weight drops off. You changed it, you cleaned up your diet, you started exercising, you're no longer pounding 17 Mountain Dews and having 3 Krispy Kremes for breakfast, and you cut that out and you train for a little bit, and you're obviously going to lose weight. But eventually, at some point, your body's going to stagnate. It's going to be like, okay, I see what you're doing, dude. I see it. And I'm going to slow things down a little bit because I need a new stimulus. You don't just, if you have a diet that's worked, right, for 2 months straight, and because here's what always happens, right? You're losing a half pound a week. So you've dropped whatever, 4 pounds, 5 pounds. You're doing it sustainably and progressively, right? But you're on the right track. You feel better, healthy. Here's what always happens. 2 things. One, very few people continue on that path and do it for long-term success, right? That's why, dieting is such a profitable business, and diet pills and everything else is so marketable. And again, another profitable, hack business is you either aren't satisfied with the results because they aren't happening fast enough. So you try to cut everything out. No sugar, no dairy, no water, no food. I'm just going off air and carbon monoxide for the next 2 weeks. And that lasts about 9 or 10 hours. Next thing you know, the Domino's pizza guy's ringing your doorbell and you're done. You're done. You give up. Or you quit because you're like, this isn't working. I need to try something different. And you go off this totally different path that's obviously and usually more extreme than your slow, progressive progress. And then you make terrible choices. You got in your own way, right? As we all do. You got distracted. You had to change. Same thing goes with training. You have athletes ask a lot, hey, when do you change up, the stimulus? I don't know. Because if it's working, I'm not touching it. If you're continuously getting better, the volume is correct, everything seems to be going well, you're happy, you're healthy, you're doing well, why would I change it just for the sake of changing it? Ride that train for as long as the conductor will let you ride. But most people, they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to try this new HIIT program, and I'm going to do this. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Mm-hmm. And then you're back to square one. You did too much, too soon, too often. And so you have to just stay the course. It should look, I know, and that's the thing, it's like nothing's sold these days. We always joke about the C26 philosophy. If you want long-term progress, come see us for 3 years. no one's gonna buy that. Yeah. We don't promise, get faster over 2 weeks or raise your FTP by 20 watts in 4 weeks. None of that. It's all marketable. And that's why, and the reason they're marketable is because hacks and shortcuts are so plentiful and they're so popular and they're like all the rage is because guess what? Everyone cycles through them 40 different times and goes to different, because you know what? If you're looking for 40 different things, you can't do one thing right.
Yeah.
And that's just that's the hard, slow, progressive, boring piece of it. But if you ask the most successful age groupers on the planet, and you ask the most, the greatest, most successful approach for athletes, the number one thing they're always going to say first and foremost is consistency. And a lot of long, boring, workouts. They do a lot more long, boring stuff. But, if you try to be spectacular before a race day, then on the chances are your race day is going to be less than spectacular.
Yeah, I think one of the main questions, everyone gets into this sport, I think, because they want to feel good and be in shape, right? For the most part. I think that's a pretty broad brush, but it's probably pretty accurate. And then I think at some point, There's an interesting thing that I run across a lot. I don't know about, yeah, I'm sure you do too, but it's sort of like, do you want to be a good triathlete, or do you want to be kind of ripped and in the gym and, just sort of like, I think focusing on triathlon makes you a better triathlete, but a lot of people want to they don't need to be super fast. They just want to be healthy and maybe look good and all these types of things. And it's just a matter of figuring that out too, right? I think that what we're talking about is letting your body adapt to things. And it always it's so weird how it just connects dots like that for me when I always talk about how important I think warming up is. And lately, out of nowhere, I just started thinking, or not even thinking, I was just like, I'm going to go run today, but my first move is I'm going to get on, and it's just because it's simple for me, but we got a treadmill here, and I just get on that for, I walk for 5 minutes, and then I jog super slow for 5 minutes, and then I go outside and I run. And it's really, it's been amazing, like how that little warm up kind of sets up even my 30-minute run after that, because when we're trying to change something or we want to be faster, it's just so tempting to go out there and start running and just immediately want to be there, and the thing we always hear is like, this run felt like shit for 2 miles and then it started feeling good. It's like, that still happens to me every time almost. And it's like, what? There's no improvement here. This first mile is the worst ever. I'm getting worse. And then suddenly, what I mean?
Getting worse. That's right.
It is. You look, and of course, you're up here, the GPS kind of sucks. So sometimes I look at my watch and it'll be like 11:15 pace or whatever. And I'll be like, what? I feel like I'm flying right now. And, but invariably, a mile and a half or 2 miles in, I start, I just kind of try not to pay attention to how, sore or stiff or whatever I might feel in the beginning. And then it just sort of comes together. But it's just your body again is like, okay, what's going on? You're just sitting on the couch for 6 hours and now you want to go, or at a desk for 8 hours and now you want to go fast. This is a weird transition for me. I don't understand it, but it always happens. But I am just amazed at how often I forget that. Or it's almost impossible to forget. Like if you go out and start running, you feel like crap the first mile and a half. You're like, this is just, what am I nothing's ever going to go my way. And then suddenly a half mile later, you feel good and you're moving. And then it's like, oh, there it is. But you always forget it. I mean, I do. I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but
I think you can. I think you probably can. I mean, everyone thinks and feels that. I mean, at some point, and it's just so funny how
but it's powerful.
It really is. It's like, and it is like how our thoughts and our actions and what we think about them, if they're good or the bad, then how we let other things influence, them. It's like something I try to be really cognizant of. Like when I wake up in the morning, if I feel really, really good, I feel like I got a lot of sleep. This has happened to me. And I check my, because I wear an HRV, I wear a Whoop band overnight, and I check my HRV and how I slept. I started to realize that I was letting what it told me affect my mood. Oh my gosh! And then I didn't feel good. And I was like, you know what? I actually I do feel good. Maybe it wasn't my best night of sleep, but I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I'm scared of those things, man.
I do not recommend for you.
2-star sleep like every night.
2-star needs improvement. I was like, I was starting to let it affect it, and it should drive some decisions, but not all. So I'm starting to do a much better job of that. But even yesterday, I went out on a run, exact same interval that I did last week, and I remember the first 10, 12, 13 minutes, I had just done it. So I'm feeling, I know everything that's going on with, with my body, because it just happened. I took the exact same route too. And during the warm up, I was like, man, I took this corner. I was like, man, I am hot. And it was the first high 30s morning. So I'm rocking shorts and a long sleeve and a shirt underneath. I was like, maybe overheated, maybe overdressed, and maybe I want to get too hot. Maybe that's why my heart rate's too high. pace is a little bit slower. Maybe it's just not a good day. And then I turn the corner, go a totally different direction. You know what I got? Headwind. So I was getting no airflow, which is why I felt so hot. And I was making all these, like you said, I was jumping to all these conclusions about these things. And then I just went along with my workout. Again, took the exact same route. The exact same. Started my interval sets around the exact same time as training as the exact. I got done with the run. I was like, man, like that just did not feel good. Maybe I did it too soon. Maybe I didn't sleep well. And so I go back in and I checked like the exact interval set from start to finish, including rest from the previous week. Turns out I was 2 seconds quicker and 1 heart rate beat down than I was the previous week. So it was in fact better. But I kept telling myself how much worse I was doing.
Yeah, and that's not enough, man.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? How much do you want?
Yeah, it's just so crazy how we think about things and feel things, and then how it just like flows throughout the rest of your body with the decision making, or like you said, like, from a feeling standpoint, then it moves on to decision making and making like an impulse decision in the moment to just stop or to do more, right? Or to go faster. Instead of being in the moment, we get these like, we're just constantly prodded with, you're going too fast, you're going too slow, your fitness is too behind, you skip too many sessions, you should do too more, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's a tailwind, there's a headwind, you are super stressed, well, maybe you didn't sleep that much, my HRV's too low, my HRV's down, maybe I should go fast, feeling pretty good today. And you're like, and you're using those like immediate ones to like, drive micro decisions. Sure. Cut it down to 35 minutes instead of 40, maybe extend from 40 to 45. Like those are minor. But a lot of people go to doing nothing or doing too much. Right? Man, I feel like crap after 10 minutes and I just decided to walk it in. Okay. But maybe walk for a little bit and then try to restart. Right? Like you said, like sometimes we often one of the more frequent things I ask, you and I both, the 95% of our job is sitting in a chair, right? We're sitting in a chair doing the podcast. We sit in a chair doing training peaks, outside of camps and stuff. Like we sit in a chair, we do our job, we sit in a chair, we laptop. And so one of the first things I ask people when they talk about being real tight, right? And the hamstrings or IT band problems, I'm always asking like, how long were you sitting today? How long were you in the car? People who have to drive a lot for work, like how long were you sitting? Did you eat enough? Did you feel enough? How much, how hydrated are you? Did you do your run this, like a lot of us, right? Or me, I know I do all the time. Like I'll go out for a run, I'll shower, and I'll immediately go sit down for a couple hours. That's not good, right? For your muscles, for your tendons, for your body, from a recovery standpoint, all it's doing is tightening me up. And then I wonder why I get up later, I feel like I'm a 93-year-old man. I'm like, right? And like you said, what to do. And a lot of times it's just a reality of the day. Like if you want to get in, you got to get in, you got to go do something. That's just how life is some days. But, a lot of times, we don't ask enough questions to get to the obvious answer that usually tells us, all right, dude, listen, everything is fine. You just did this, and this. That's why you feel this way. Carry on. Just take it easier. Right. But we immediately it's interesting. Like the massive alarm bells go off now with everything. It's got to be something severe. It's got to be something terrible. Well, usually if you just troubleshoot, it turns out to be just nothing. A lot of times it's just a feeling, right? A fleeting thought or feeling that we latched onto and made it the present for now and for as long as we can hold on to it. And then that dictates and drives, everything that we do, everything that we feel, the decisions that we make. And so it's just like, I think one of the best skills to have as an individual, but also especially as an athlete, especially in long course, is the ability to let thoughts, and feelings flow through and to not stick and to not be a prisoner of the moment. And, because when it comes to racing and when it comes to being, to doing your best, inevitably it's not if, it's when something is going to happen. Something is going to come up. You're not going to feel good. And a lot of times I think we latch onto these feelings of or thoughts of negativity or whatever else when, the fact is like that's gone. It's, to me, it's like I was having this conversation with somebody actually yesterday at the store, and they were joking. They said, listen, the using COVID as an excuse for not having something in stock, that ship has sailed. If you haven't figured it out by now as a business, you're never going to figure it out. And it's like that continual use of the phrase unprecedented times to you're holding on to an excuse that is long gone. And I think as athletes and as people, we hold on to these feelings and thoughts and especially when they're negative, right? Nobody holds on to the positive ones. Man, I had a great day. I'm gonna carry this shit over to tomorrow. And you wake up and you're like, man, yesterday was great. Today's gonna be great. It's like, oh, yesterday was so terrible. I bet today is too. We just carry on that mentality. And I think there's just so much power in not letting things stick and just letting them flow and listening to your body and not, marrying yourself to, each micro decision doesn't have to be one that lasts for the next 2 months. Like I had an athlete yesterday that asked me, hey, I think, I might be getting ahead of myself. And I'm like, I can already tell right now before you even hit send, you're already ahead of yourself. It's like, let's just focus on the next, like, I'm sure you do have this athletes like this too. They have one bad week, maybe two. And they say, you know what? I probably don't even have time for triathlon. I think I'm going to adjust my goals for the next couple of years. And I'm like, whoa. It was 2 weeks. Let's just pump the brakes on planning for what we're going to do in 2025, right? Let's slow down, right? But the same thing goes for, when things are going great, they're like, yeah, I don't know. I think I can qualify for Boston next year. What do you think? And I'm like, out of office. Let's just take our time, right? Let's take our time doing things, right? With good things. We're all like that, in every kind of avenue of life. It's hard to let thoughts and feelings pass through instead of latching onto them.
Yeah. What you're saying right there, it just reminded me of a phrase I always liked. It's just sort of like meditation in motion. And if you look at, you go out, say on a run or whatever, and you want to stay at, right in the middle of a continuum, say at the 5 or 50%. And then these thoughts start popping in and, it's just a good practice to kind of not let them give above 60% or not get below 40, but just kind of letting it go. And I mean, that's really the whole principle, I think, behind meditation is just to acknowledge thoughts and just let them go. Like you said, I mean, it can be, we think about meditating and sitting in a place for 20, 30 minutes or whatever, but the goal is to kind of have that be your sort of progress or your practice in daily life, just sort of, all right, that's a thought. It is what it is. It's just a thought. I'm going to let it go or deal with it now or later, whatever, but just not like be obsessed about it. I wanted to point back to something you said about running the exact same route, which I think is, you and I have always been huge fans of that.
Huge fans.
Huge.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I have one route here. It's a loop and it's about 3.3 miles. And I run that pretty much every day. There is an option to veer into sandy hills and kind of some fields that makes it about 3.5. But it's at about about the 1.5 mile mark. And I make my decision there if I don't feel like doing it. But some days I feel good and I want to like challenge it a little bit. But I still don't like try to crush it or anything like that. But I run that route basically all the time right now. It's about 30 to 35 minutes or whatever, depending on the day. But I also have one other. At the end of my mile, I can go for 5 if I want. And it's just, I make these decisions sort of on the fly. I'm just trying to keep consistent running. And, we list plans that say go 30, 40, 50, whatever. But, I feel like especially after Ironman, doing 30 or 40 is really not a huge difference. And it just depends. If I feel good, I kind of do that. But it's really, like you said, it was like a heartbeat lower and maybe a couple seconds per mile faster. To me, it's just so much. I enjoy that kind of knowing I guess that's about as metrics as I get, sort of like, I have the same terrain, I have the same basic temperature, and I'll look at things but the challenge, and I pointed it out, is sometimes, that loop, I might run it 30 seconds faster, not trying. And I'll be like, 30 seconds, that ain't, but it's something, and if you can kind of gauge that over a little period, I another guy I talked, he just he did Wisconsin, and now he's up and out riding his bike. He does the same thing. He's got basically the same distance or loop, but some days he veers to the hilly side of it, and some days he doesn't. It just depends on how he feels when he gets out there. And I think that's a really good mantra to have right now. Just kind of be flexible on the fuck around and just sort of pick your spots, because you can, some days you feel it, other days you don't. And just when the days you don't, I think it's important to look at that as a good thing, because that's really what racing is, figuring out how to get there when you don't feel as great as you would like, so it's all good practice. It's all good experience for something that you're invariably going to face, and be happy with marginal gains, because marginal is where it's at in the sport.
It's like, that's, I think, going back to, the decisions you said, and like, having like two routes, is we have, and a lot of athletes are like this, is it's either a win or a loss. There's no draw. And what so many athletes do, like what you said about, and I've got it too. Like I can run from my house, and I can run straight to the trail, the greenway, and run pancake flat for as long as I want. Or I can head up to the main road and the sidewalk and hit just rolling / hilly terrain. So I got a choice. And that's why I love, like, having some similar routes and options, is that there's wins both ways. It's not, or a draw. It's not you lost. And I'm not, and that's what so many athletes think, is they look at every workout, it has to be, their body has to feel like it needs to win today, or it's a loss. A lot of times a draw is just good enough, right? Just going through the motions, just hop on the bike, you do a couple intervals, and you're like, you know what? I just don't know that I have it. Whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, you just don't got it today. Just stop the intervals and ride easy. Because usually what's happening, right? Because a good aerobic intensity is great for helping dissipate the effects of stress. So just instead of creating more stress and digging a hole, ride easy and let that stress dissipate. But stopping completely doesn't solve anything, right? And that's what I think a lot of athletes get in that mode of, if it can't be done perfect, it shouldn't be done at all. If I can't complete the hour, I shouldn't even be going out for 20. And it's the same. Usually the same athletes that want to make up for sessions. It's not so black and white. Like, in so many things in this world now, we're black and white. You're either this or you're that. There's no in between. Like, well, yeah, some of us kind of live in the gray. Some of us live in between, and it's okay for some things to be considered a draw or an okay, or it didn't really go that great. But that's okay. Good is fine. Okay is fine. And heck, like you nail 80% of your days okay. You got 10% great days and 10% shit days. You had a pretty solid year, right? But we have, again, like this, I think, this perception with life and social media that everything's got to be fantastic. It's funny. I had an athlete who just moved, love him to death, and he sent like a picture of he just moved to the pool, and he sent me a text. It was like his brand new pool is like, moving as hell. Everyone knows this. And he hadn't got to work at it all week, and he sends this picture, like this beautiful picture of the pool that he now gets to swim with the sunset. And I'm like, dude, it looks like a freaking resort. And then he sends me, like a picture the next day of his box-filled, just stress-induced, cluttered new workout room. And I said, I look back to both pictures and I said, real life, Instagram. I was like, that is like the perfect like example of, he admitted it. It was just funny. It's like, that's exactly right. What we see and we expose ourselves to daily is like, it's got to be wins and losses, when lots of times like a push is fine. A tie is fine. A draw is fine. It doesn't have to be. And a lot of times, those draws feel like wins when you're done. Because if you thought about quitting and then you got done, and you and I see this all the time. Every week, almost with every athlete. I didn't feel like doing it. I almost didn't do it. But once I did it, I felt great. My legs felt like shit. Once I did a few, strides, man, did I feel good. Did a few openers, and man, do I feel better than I did before I got on the bike today. And then occasionally it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm cutting it short. I don't got it today. But oftentimes it's that, the intent, your thought, right, that you attached to it was that it was going to be a loss. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to go for the draw and just get something done. And then the cool thing is that most oftentimes it ends up feeling like a win. And then guess what? Those wins create momentum. And then they create the passion and the drive and the desire to, instead of not accepting a loss, go for a draw. And if you get a draw, fine, but it's not often to get a win. But if you accept a loss, the next day, guess what? You're going to be more likely to accept another loss, right? If you create your own, and when you talk about professional sports teams, it's always talk about, a losing culture and a winning culture. And getting that kind of monkey off their back, and becoming a winning culture and believing you can close out games because it's what you do, right? I'm thinking like with the Chicago Bears right now, are like the perennial losing franchise in NFL. They can't turn around. They generally kind of think there's probably a vibe where it's like, we're probably going to lose this game or something's going to go wrong. And you got Detroit Lions, who are like the laughing stock of the NFL for, decades. Freaking 5-1 this year. Total culture change. But it takes wins. Not almost, not ties. It takes wins. But it also takes lacing up and trying to make an effort to change that, because losing is contagious, but guess what else is? Winning. Winning teams and that's like one of the, I think, they say this about every player, about every championship team. They just know how to win. Or, and I hate even to say this because Tennessee's playing Alabama this weekend. I know.
I gave up on football, by the way. Go ahead.
Again, I noticed is when Alabama was going through their, period of dominance, which is long gone, is every game you would watch, they'd be down by 7, they'd be down by 10. And you would be like, you wouldn't think they were going to lose. You would think, fuck, you know what? They're probably going to come back and win this. And then they did every time, because they were addicted to winning. They did everything right. They felt like no matter what, they were going to win. And then you got teams like, like I felt with Tennessee the last few years before last year, even if we're up by 10, you know what I'm thinking? Don't worry. We're going to find a way to lose, right? Because we had that losing culture. So like when you think about like that analogy and going to like your own self and creating your own culture, right, of training and racing and getting out the door and swimming and riding and running, is you can either choose to create a losing culture or you can choose to create a winning culture. And it doesn't mean you're going to get a guarantee either way, which is the great thing about endurance sports, is you wake up and you have no idea what's going to give you. Shelve the expectations and just get out there. Some days it might be a draw. Some days it might feel like a loss, but just getting out there is going to feel like a win. And once you kind of steamroll and create that momentum and create your own winning culture, then, honestly, the sky's the limit.
Alabama's 6-1.
Yeah, I know. We are. I think we're 5-1.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
My guy from my high school used to coach the Lions, but that was back in the day, a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Back when they were perennial losers?
I think he started the culture shift, but they fired him, I think.
Yeah, typical. See, they wanted abrupt change. You know what they got? Back to losing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great, dude. Yeah. Create a winning culture.
And do it now. Don't wait till January 1st.
Yeah, don't do it. Just start today. I'm going after 364 draws and 1 win next year.
There you go. And the one win is on race day.
Exactly. That's it. Stay right in the pocket. Explode.
We got a pretty good racing weekend. You got North Carolina 70.3. You got Ironman California Weather looks spectacular. No winter, storm, hurricane, tsunamis forecasted. It looks like I actually had an athlete text this morning. What do you panic about during race week when the weather actually looks perfect? I was like, don't worry, you'll find something. You'll find something to panic about. Yeah, but yeah, it looks like a great weekend for all things, fast swim. North Carolina, probably the fastest swim outside of Augusta, maybe even faster than Augusta on the 70.3 circuit.
Oregon fast?
Yeah, Oregon. Yeah, Oregon's. Yeah, it's kind of you can see it. I think the last 3 70.3s they've announced, not all three, but
I see what you're doing.
The downstream swims. Yeah, back to Louisville, downstream. The new Washington race, downstream. Oregon, downstream. Augusta, downstream. Chattanooga, downstream.
Hey,
yeah, topic for a different day. I'm gonna let that thought flow through, and I'm not gonna stick with it. We don't have time. That's right.
Serenity now.
Serenity now. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and it's our one-stop shop for all things coaching camps and community. If you're looking for coaching for the remainder of the year or even in 2024, check out our coaching tab. Look for the coach that is right for you, and be on the lookout for some awesome new programs we'll be announcing here soon, starting in December for next year. And as always, if you need anything from Mike, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, we got a comment on the YouTube listen about stopping short, and I think it was mentioned that we said George, but yeah, we know it's Frank. That
I know. Yeah, I know.
You knew that on the spot, but let me just I just want to reiterate that we know Seinfeld. We just botched it.
Did someone really correct?
It wasn't fun. I don't think they were being
good, because I already live with 2 correctors.
I know, it's unbelievable.
I live with my wife is in compliance, so everything is got to be right, and then I have a 7-year-old. Yeah. So if you have a 7-year-old, everything is specific. Everything has to be exact, like you said. Or that's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
I know. I actually, because we just fly and there's no editing. I knew that was the case, but I just kind of let it go. Like you said, let it go and flow it off. It was something that came out. And I thought about people who
said on Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, leave that stuff.
Typo.
Just serenity now.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you're going to get on to me about typos, grammar, correct punctuation, and expletives, we're not going to be friends, because I suck at all of them. But you know what? At least I own it.
Yeah, exactly. I almost went in there and edited, put my voice over yours and said, Frank Costanza, which would have been amazing.
I would have been okay with that, because when it comes to Seinfeld, it's you got to treat them right, man.
I know. I still watch that show. Along with Northwoods Baseball Sleep podcast. It's one of the things that helps me clear my head and go to bed.
Yeah, it is. It's a good mindless. It's cheery, a good laugh, and it's good fun.
Speaking of the baseball sleep, I got to bring this up, because I told you what that is. It's just some boring broadcast this guy does. It's fictitious. It's about a fake baseball league. It's actually in Wisconsin, Michigan, and whatever. And he just goes through and just puts you to sleep with his voice, and it's just the boring baseball bullshit. But the other day they had a rain delay, and for 15 minutes he read the Lake Michigan shipping forecast.
People get paid for this?
I don't know if he makes any money, but he's just having a fun podcast. I mean,
people are the same thing about us.
It was so funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, if I want to go to sleep, I usually turn on NASCAR or golf.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good ones.
They're solid ones to put you to sleep.
The hum of the engine and
watching paint dry. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's go throw up a few lounge chairs and sit on the side of the interstate and watch these cars go by fast.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, man. Well,
time to plunge. All right, see you, dude.
See you, man.